Okay, here we go. We've talked about Freud, and we've talked about the unconscious, the ego, the superego, the battle that goes on there. We also talked about the psychosexual stages of development. That was in lecture one. Now we're going to get to lecture two, which is going to talk about defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms, and by the way, this isn't just Freud and psychoanalysis. Defense mechanisms are used by all people, but this is a focus on the subconscious and the unconscious, which is explaining exactly why we do them. So let's take it step by step. We go back to the id, the ego, and the superego. Remember, there's conflict within the subconscious. The id wants what it wants, doesn't care about the ramifications, and when I don't get it, there's longing, there's anger, there's frustration. Superego, on the other hand, when you do things that are desirable, gives you anxiety about it, guilt, you feel inferior, you compare yourself to other people, whatnot. The ego's job is to balance these two knuckleheads out. So how do I give in to all of the wants and forget about the ramifications that the id wants, and the guilt and anxiety of the superego, who never wants the pleasures for fear of upsetting others. This is why we use defense mechanisms, and the ego uses the defense mechanisms, because when the ego ignores the outside reality, we're going to suffer quite a bit with that. So defense mechanisms are the way that the ego satisfies the demands of the id without offending the superego. Very difficult job because of the frustration of the id not getting what they want and the demands that the superego sort of makes for us. So what we do is we distort reality. And by distorting reality in our subconscious, we see the world in the way that's convenient for us and makes us feel better. Because again, the job of the ego is to unconsciously protect you. And so anything that is a threat to you, it wants to make it look like it's not a threat. A lot of times we're doing it, we don't realize we're doing it. Sometimes it's necessary that we do it just for our well-being. Example, if my wife and I were to have gotten in an argument and we're fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, never the case, but let's say that that was the case. And so she says this morning, I want a divorce, blah, 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 and I've got to go to work. I can't think about the divorce. I can't think about what she wants. I've got to teach. I've got to grade. I've got students to take care of. So I'll take whatever was going on that morning and I'll repress it. I'll put it away because I can't deal with it at that time. That's a defense mechanism of repression, because we can't deal with everything at every particular moment. So sometimes temporarily defense mechanisms are good. But when you use defense mechanisms as your new sense of reality, like denial with the coronavirus, which technically while this video is being made, we're experiencing right now in this lockdown, those who deny that it's a big deal and just decide go outside, play basketball, whatever, contact other people, you're going to put yourself more at risk by denying it. I mean, sure, denial is great because I don't want to focus on the death rate. Let me focus on the survival rate. But there's still that death rate that you're ignoring in doing that. So you can't always use them. So let's take the defense mechanisms one by one. Let's start with the most widely used, very easy to use, and it's rationalization. Rationalization is when things don't quite work out the way that we wanted them to. So what we'll do is we'll sort of make excuses for it. We'll blame others for it. You failed a test, so you go, well, the test questions were bad, or everybody failed. Well, maybe everybody failed, but that doesn't change the fact that you still don't know the material. Blaming the teacher, saying that the teacher very famously hates me, or the teacher doesn't like me and they're out to get me, and da-da-da-da-da. It's not your fault, it's everybody else's fault. That's rationalization. The idea of when you make fun of somebody else and you were mean to them and you go, well, it was to help you. You got to be cruel to be kind. No, you don't. It's one thing to say to somebody, would you like a Tic Tac? Would you like a piece of gum? And it's another thing to go, oh my God, your breath stinks. What died in your face? That's not nice. And some people go, yeah, but then they'll take care of themselves. They'll go to the dentist. I helped them. Well, what you're trying to do is deal with the anxiety of hurting that person. When parents punish you and they go, this hurts me more than it hurts you. It really doesn't. But when the kid is feeling bad and their rights are taken away or whatever, the parent who feels bad for doing it goes, well, I'm suffering too. Claiming that the lie is just a little white lie. It's okay. And, if I tell my parents what I did, they'll feel like they're terrible parents, whatever else the case may be. A lot of times when it comes to rationalization, the person using them, you actually believe it to be true because it's your subconscious going, this is my new reality, because it protects you from anxiety and it protects you from shame. And it also trivializes things. Nobody got hurt, so I cheated. It's no big deal. Nobody got hurt. It's just a daily grade. Well, if it's just a daily grade, take the 0. Well, I can't have a 0. So it's not just a daily grade. Lying to your parents, taking a piece of candy from the store. It's just one piece of candy. I mean, come on. The jelly bean company, the one little jelly bean is going to make a difference. Well, no. But if everybody in America does that and you're suddenly taking 300 million jelly beans away from a company, that's going to be pretty significant. Another form of defense mechanisms, which is very simple to do, is something called denial, where you refuse to accept the reality of something that makes you anxious. It doesn't exist. It's not there. It's not a problem. I don't hear that sound out there. There was no sound. You refuse to listen to hurricane warnings and you stay at home. It's not going to hurt me. It's going to hurt other people. Again, I'm sitting at home right now here on April 3rd of 2020. And we are in the middle of the quarantine for the coronavirus. And there's a lot of people out there that won't quarantine. There's states at this moment that still have free range, free roam, go wherever you want, no restrictions. There's not a lot of cases here. It's happening elsewhere. Well, by doing that, there's going to be a lot of more cases there. So if you don't take these little hints or whatever, the governor of Georgia just a day ago going, I didn't know you didn't have symptoms to have to change it or to have to pass it. Yeah, we've been saying that for 2 months. Very simple to do. And as a matter of fact, we do it a lot. You get bad news. Your puppy got hit by a car. No, not Scruffy. Well, yes, Scruffy. It's not like going, no. There's a chance for a new reality to come forward. Gives yourself a second chance. So again, when we don't like the bad news, no, that's not happening. No, wake me up. No, it's a dream. It's not a dream. It's reality. But we don't want to accept that reality. This can also work for positive things where you're in a great relationship, but you've been in so many bad relationships. You can't believe that this relationship is a good relationship. So you go, well, you're going to cheat. When are you going to show your bad side? When are you going to do your bad things? When are you going to act like a jerk? When it's due, you're due. No, just accept the fact that it's good. But sometimes we can't accept the good things either. Again, this can work in the short range. As I said before, if I got in an argument, I can't deal with that argument. I got to go to work, do whatever I got to do. That's fine. But if you use it in the long term, it diminishes your perception of reality. You have a lack of contact from reality. There's your world and your rules, and then there's what everybody else is doing. And again, I don't want to sound political here, but when you have President Trump in January and February denying to himself that the coronavirus was going to be that big of a deal, it would go away in the spring with the warmer weather, blah, 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 blah. That was fine for the moment and kept the economy going and whatnot, but you're ignoring the fact that it is a big deal, okay? Blaming the poor test questions will make you feel better in the short term, but you still don't know the material. So again, that's all with denial. Also can be used internally. Friends that said something claiming, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. That wasn't me. And if they keep saying that, if you keep saying, no, I didn't say that. No, I wasn't there. No, that wasn't me. After a while, when you keep using this defense mechanism again and again and again, it becomes your new reality and you believe that's what it was. Doing something you were ashamed of. I didn't do that. No, that wasn't me. No, you're thinking of someone else. This ends up becoming your new reality. It's like asking or telling someone who's an addict, somebody who vapes, well, why don't you quit? Well, I'm not addicted to vaping. Well, then why don't you quit? Well, I don't want to. No, you can't. You can't quit. You think you can quit, but you're addicted to the nicotine or whatever else. I got to lose weight. Why don't you go? Well, why don't you exercise? Well, I could if I wanted to. Why don't you? Well, yeah. You can't. So this is a temporary way to deal with an overwhelming issue. A person, we talked about this before, though. Sometimes it can be good. Remember when we talked about the different levels of, or the different reactions to the news of women who got breast cancer. those that were distraught by it, or those that were just accepting of it, fared worse than those who denied it. So sometimes denial could maybe sometimes work. And when it comes to the 5 emotional stages of death, not that you necessarily need to know these, denial is the first. You know, we go to the doctor, you got whatever to live, and we want a second opinion. We never want a second opinion when things are going well. And then it goes to a stage of what's called resentment. Once you realize that I've got 6 months, 9 months here to live or whatever, you start resenting other people. Look at you, you've got your whole life ahead of you, everything else. So resentment comes in next. Then that's followed by negotiation. Come on, doc, there's got to be something else. Or you become spiritual and suddenly you go to the church and you say, come on, you know, let's believe in whatever and God will help me, please. There's got to be some sort of negotiation I can do, which is then followed by depression. Well, if I'm just going to die anyways, why even get out of bed? Why even try? Loss of appetite, loss of drive. And then finally what it gets to is resignation or acceptance, which is, okay, well, it's been a good life. Let's call people and tell them I love them and all those other things. Those are the 5 emotional stages of death. In class, we'll talk about how that's very similar to when somebody breaks up with you. Next, and just other things there. Repression. All right, repression is not denial. Denial is that never happened. Repression is, yeah, I know it happened. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. And this is when we take something and we push it away because whatever the thought is, whatever the action is that we did, whatever, it's unacceptable. So I push it away. A young girl's id may feel that she hates her mother. Her mother's very restrictive and won't let her do things. But the superego says, I've got mail. The superego says you can't hate your mother. You cannot hate your mother. No way. She gave you life. She gave you all these other things. You cannot hate your mother. So your ego goes, well, then I'm just not happy with her. So you're repressing the real issue and the real hate. And then what you do is you try to avoid your mother. You try to avoid all mothers. You try to avoid a movie or shows about mothers. You just don't want mothers in your life at that moment. But again, the problem here is you're never truly dealing with the issue by just repressing and repressing and repressing. Works with memories as well. Let's say you did something a month ago. You went to a party or something, and then something bad happened at the party. And then your friend a week later goes, hey, remember at the party you did that? Shut up. Don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about that. If you're going to talk about that, we're not going to be friends anymore. You don't wear the outfit, that you wore to the party, any pictures of the party, any stories of the party. You just leave. It doesn't change the fact of whatever happened at the party happened at the party. You just refuse to accept the reality. You don't want to deal with that particular thing. So you're trying to forget what you did, and you're trying to get away from other people that know what you did. And a lot of times it gets to the extreme. Sometimes people even leave their friends. Let me start with a new group of friends. That way I don't have to deal with all these other issues at another place. And again, the thing with a psychoanalyst is a psychoanalyst goes, when you leave all those knots in your life, you got to go back and untie those knots. And a lot of psychoanalysis is about going back and dealing with these repressed issues that we have. Now, repression can lead to this emotional volcano because, again, if you never deal with anything and you just shove it under the carpet or shove it in your closet, when your parents tell you to clean your room, you just take everything and you shove it in the closet and you shut the door. Yes, the floor looks clean. Yes, it looks like a clean room, but immediately when I need something, it's going to explode again. And so the more and more that we repress, the more and more that it is going to push out, and especially in our dreams. It comes out huge because the ego goes to sleep. And this is where all those things that we feel guilty about, the superego comes out to play. And there's the lion chasing you through the forest. And then at the same time, all the desires that we want that we're denying to ourselves, that's the id coming out to play during that particular time. The more repression, the more the id pushes out, the more energy it takes to push it back. And eventually the dam is going to break. The kid who's the school shooter. Every time you hear the story, he was picked on, he was pushed around, he was all these other things. I mean, how many times have you been walking through the hallways of school and then you're just thinking, man, one more person says one more thing to me today and I'm going to lose it. One more teacher gives me one more assignment, because you're just pushing these things down, and there is a breaking point that we all have. You hear the news story, the murder suspect's neighbors, they seem like such a quiet family because it's repression, repression, repression. and pushing all this stuff down. I mean, I'm sure if you're the older brother and you've ever pushed your younger brother and he just went, wow, he just went nuts on you. One of the reasons for that is it's not about that one particular moment where you tripped him or nudged him or whatever. It's about 10 years of that stuff bubbling up, and finally, I'm not going to take any more of this crap. So you got to watch out for that volcano. And again, severe use of repression can lead to depression because, you know, you just get tired of pushing it down all the time. Why even go out? Why even try to put anything else in my life? And again, it can lead to depression. Reaction formation. Another type of defense mechanism here where we take an unacceptable thought or an unacceptable feeling and we present the opposite one. Because the unacceptable thought is so bad. So let me say that I'm something else. It's like the guy who farts in the elevator and blames it. Hey, who farted? You know, he's going to push it on to somebody else there. It wasn't me. I didn't, you know, yeah, you did. But no, I could never do that. I haven't had beans in years, whatever. The father who resents having his children around and they shower him with gifts. Go, look at this. I'm giving my kids so many gifts. How can you say I don't love them? Look at all the gifts that I'm giving. The woman who plays dumb, the person who goes to the haunted house and puts on a brave face when they're truly scared. You sort of go over the top with the opposite sort of reaction to cover up the true desires that you may have. One of the reasons you do this is because whatever those desires are, the superego looks at it as immoral and wrong and everything else, as the id is trying to push it up. So we go to the extreme opposite. Preachers and politicians who talk about family values and go on anti-pornography campaigns, and then suddenly you've got the FBI showing up and taking away drives and drives of computers with child pornography on it. But how could they have it? They were so loud. They spoke so much against it. They spoke so much about family values. How could he be cheating on his wife? Usually the one who's the loudest about it, which you have to be asking is, who are they trying to convince? Are they trying to convince you? Or are they trying to convince themselves? Or are they trying to put on such a brave face so that no one will actually suspect them? And a great example of this is gay bashing. You know, because again, if you don't agree with homosexuality, that's fine. And you don't think that it's right, you think it's immoral, against the Bible, whatever else the case may be, and all you're fearful of the spread of it, that's fine. And you just go, well, I don't like that, so I'm not going to become that, or I'm not going to surround myself. That's fine. But when you're constantly gay bashing, when you're going, no, that's gay, you're gay, stop being gay, and it's just gay bashing, gay bashing, gay bashing, the question becomes, why are you being so loud about it? Are you trying to convince everybody else, or are you trying to convince yourself? And sometimes what you'll discover is the person who was the biggest gay basher of them all comes back to the high school reunion with his boyfriend because they're trying to convince the world, no, don't look at me, look out there. But it's also sort of trying to convince themselves sometimes as well. And by the way, I'm not saying that every homophobic person is secretly gay, but when you're really loud about it, who are you really trying to convince? Sibling rivalry. Freud would talk about this when you've got the baby who comes home from the hospital and the new brother or sister looks at the baby and goes, I love my little baby, your brother. And Freud would go, well, how could you love this thing? You just met it. Not to mention that it's here to compete against you and everything else. And the reason that you're telling yourself that you love it so much is to stop yourself from killing it because it is this rival that has now entered into your home, according to Freud. Projection, very similar to reaction formation, but a little bit different. Don't look at it. It's not me that has the bad thoughts. It's other people that have the bad thoughts because I don't want my bad thoughts. It's the girl who says, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. When in reality, she probably hates herself, but she's taking that and she's projecting it onto other people. It's somebody who says, well, you just want to go out with other people. Well, you just want to cheat on me. When in reality, you're probably the one who wants to go out with other people. You're the one who would like to cheat, but you want to project it onto someone else so it can't be accused that you are the one who wants to do it. When others don't agree with you, it's because they're all morons. Well, maybe you're the idiot, but you want to project that, no, it's not me, it's somebody else. Now, again, sometimes judgments are legit. Sometimes people do foolish things to call them out on it, whatever. Yeah. It's not always projection. But if you're constantly pointing out other people. You're constantly looking at the flaws of others. That's projection. As a matter of fact, the biggest bullies are projecting their own insecurities on other people, and that's why they're picking on them. It's because they see their own inferiority in those people, so they're trying to, according to Freud, take their own inferiority and sort of taunt it and beat it up by projecting it on someone else. Displacement, similar to this, where I can't take it out on the original thing, so let me take it out on something else that's safer. Go to work, guy goes to work, woman goes to work, their boss is yelling at them, whatever, I can't yell at my boss, so I'll come home and I yell at my kids. Because that's safe. You'll pick on your brothers and sisters and yell at them and not your friends, because your friends can stop being your friends. Your brothers and sisters are always going to be your brothers and sisters. You're upset with your parents, so you yell at your teacher. Because the teacher, it's a temporary relationship and they can't ground me and things like that. And it seems, so let's take my frustration and displace it onto something else. It's no longer acceptable to suck my thumb, so you chew a pen, chew your fingernails. You feel like you're out of control or powerless at school, so you start to play video games, and I displace myself into these video games, and that's where my aggression is, and everything else. And by the way, that's where we also get to that idea of do video games cause aggression? Some people will make the argument that video games are cathartic and it allows people to get their aggression out, but also when you're getting that adrenaline at a really, really high rate, it can also seep out too. So it's up in the air. Now this again has a domino effect, because you have the father yell at the mother, who yells at the child, who yells at the next child, da, 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 da. This gets to the youngest child. And if you are the youngest child, you know, when it gets to all the family coming together, you start to feel a little bit nervous, because you know you're at the bottom of the totem pole and there's nobody that you can sort of take it all out on. Again, this is different from projection, because this is an action. Projection is an emotion. This is my insecurity. Let me put my emotion on someone else. Whereas displacement is, I want to be aggressive towards this, can't attack that, so let me attack this. So it goes on to something else. That's displacement. Now, regression is, as we talked about before with Freud, it's going back to a previous time. So this is when someone's feeling anxiety and they want to go back to an earlier psychosexual stage, according to Freud, to sort of take care of that point, where they feel more comfortable at that point. You know, you've got all these projects due, whatever else, all these grades due, and sometimes you just want to sit and watch Dora the Explorer. I can sort of go back to elementary school when things were easy and you knew she would find her backpack, and Swiper never wins, and all these other things. You just want to go back to that time, which is great. Blue's Clues, it's all good. But when you're starting to act like that because you don't want responsibilities, your parents go, "Could you empty the dishwasher?" You empty the dishwasher. You know, you talk back like a little shit. You whine, you know, clean your room. "I don't want to clean my room," and you just make faces and you pout, and you're regressing back to being a child because you don't want to do your particular thing. Calling your parents mommy and daddy to get what you want, because that takes their memory and puts it into a specific context and remembers that childlike thing. Allowing your parents to do what you know you can do for yourself. You know, "Mom, can you cut my meat? Can you make my plate?" Whatever. You know you can do it yourself, but you want to act like a baby due to the jealousy that the younger siblings are getting. That is regression. Sublimation, the last of the defense mechanisms, is where you have a forbidden desire, but you can't do that forbidden thing. So instead, what you do is you find an acceptable way to do the forbidden thing. I can't kill people, but I can play a video game, so I'll sublimate it onto that, which is a little bit like displacement. Okay, you're going through a breakup. I got this extra energy, so I'll write a song. Take out your aggression in physical activities. I'm not allowed to beat people up, but I can join the football team, knock someone out, and I can get a letter on my jacket. Job choices. If your id has a desire to cut and to watch things bleed, well, that's psycho, right? No, become a surgeon, become a butcher, become a mortician. You know, there's all sorts of things that you can do to sort of take that on. If your id has a desire to argue, you want to argue all the time, well, that's obnoxious, unless you're a lawyer, and then you can make a lot of money for it, or a politician, whatever. Or if your id is afraid of growing up, you become a teacher. you never have to grow up. You're always, I'm going to be in high school for the rest of my life. So that's where you make these sort of choices and you take what would be looked at as a bad thing. What, you're never going to grow up? You're never going to get out of high school? No, I'm going to make a career being in high school. That's sublimation. Okay, so there you go. You've got all of them right there. If you want to pause on that and write things down, you got another graphic right there with all your defense mechanisms and another graphic right there if you would like to pause and take a look at that. Next, we're going to take a look at sort of reading the subconscious, and we'll take a look at humanism in lecture number 3. If I can figure out how to stop the recording. Oh, here we go.